Well, for those who noticed, we missed a week last week, and if you read it in the paper, you would see in brackets, managed. That's why we weren't here. But we are back again for another Variety Hour podcast this week. I'm Sergio Paradise, and here's another man who's not the first and he won't be the last to have hamstring awareness. It's Titus O'Reilly, ladies and gentlemen.
I think that's why we missed, didn't we?
Yeah, hamstring awareness. There's nothing wrong with them. We're just aware of them.
Oh my God, I got hamstrings. Well, it's really my fault. I've just bitten too much off, a bit more off than I can chew in the last couple of weeks because I had all the Comedy Festival stuff and then I'm finishing off my second book.
Right.
So it's all on deadline. So last week just got wiped. So that was my fault.
And then you got crook and then I got crook.
I did get crook towards the end of it.
And I reckon the reason why we both got sick at the same time was Richmond's relentless pressure.
I think it's because
they'll wear anybody down.
I think it's because the idea of writing a book and doing a comedy festival show at the same time was one of the dumbest things I've ever done because people who know me know I'm not used to working, let alone working hard.
And that's multitasking at its finest.
Oh, it's terrible.
And if you speak to any comedians, they would, even writing a book is something that comes as very much a secondary thing to performing live. You certainly couldn't do both at once.
Well, performing live just is all-consuming.
It is.
It's weird.
People think it's that just 1 hour you're up there.
Yeah, but then they forget it's the 8 hours drinking afterwards.
Yeah, that's the most important. Hanging out with other comedians.
No, it was just... but by the end of it, I was pretty sure. But I do have a couple more shows because they all sold out down in Melbourne. So I got another Melbourne show on the 6th of June at the Comics Lounge. Yeah. So Frontier Touring, I'll put the link in the show notes. But if you'd like to come, if you missed the thoroughly unhelpful history of Australian sports show at the Comedy Festival, which I know many people did, come on down. So that's selling well. And Adelaide, I'm doing the next night, the 7th of June.
Back to back.
And that one is, because I haven't done this show at all in Adelaide yet, that show is selling gangbusters. So,
and that's it, the Arkaba?
Arkaba again, and it's like,
good spot,
I think it's almost like half sold out already, and it's still 3 or 4 weeks away. So if you do want to come in Adelaide, I was in Adelaide on the weekend. We can get to that when we talk about Port Showdown, because I've got some feedback to you about Adelaide.
Oh, okay.
Because I know you've got strong views. Now, you and I both were in shock yesterday.
Yeah.
Absolute shock.
Oh, I dropped my coffee about 2 o'clock yesterday afternoon.
Within seconds of it happening, you text me. You're the first person. Mark Neeld, either quit originally and then got sacked, or was just sacked or quit. Who knows?
As you pointed out, it's pretty rough when you quit and then they sack you afterwards.
Straight away, yeah. It was a bit like who dumped who, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was.
You know, you're dumped. No, I've already broke up with you.
Yeah, exactly. Mark.
So Mark was at Essendon. He's sort of Worsfold's righto man. They used to call him the sort of the game day strategy guy, which Essendon supporters are going, oh, there was a strategy?
We've got one, yeah.
And then so suddenly it seems we should mention that loss to Carlton is as bad as it gets.
Oh, yeah, I watched that game and very rarely do I barrack for Carlton. But on that day I just thought, up until about half time, it was a bit of an arm wrestle. You couldn't tell who was going to run away with it. But I thought, geez, I hope Carlton bury Essendon in this second half. Just to see what sort of crisis they're going to be in, the Bombers, after this. And that's exactly what's happened.
But don't you think it reminded me of when Essendon, with the top-ups, beat Melbourne?
Yeah.
You know, there's those games where you just, as a supporter, you feel like your club's at as close to as low as it can go, but you go, oh, there's one more step. If we lose this is...
That's it.
And it seems to me that, you know, that's sort of what happened. And Essendon fans, quite rightly, are looking at this going, we had more fight in us when we had VFL cast-offs playing for us.
Well, we had Mark Jamar in the ruck.
That's right, you know, who was good 2 years past really his use by date. Yeah. And so they're looking at this going, what's going on? Now, Worsfold's been re-signed and he's the coach, but you look at this and all the stuff that's been reported, and who knows how much is true, that it all kept getting funneled through Mark Neeld. Yeah. And then he'd put everyone offside, which is the most believable part of the entire story. Yeah, because you talk to anyone who has been coached by Mark Neeld, there is not a good word said about it.
Anyone who worked or played for Melbourne in the Neeld era, short as it was, will say pretty much the same thing. But it seems like, as you say, the stuff that came out yesterday after he was sacked, apparently in the Essendon coaches box, everything had to be, as you say, funneled through Mark Neeld, and the other assistant coaches weren't allowed to talk in the coaches box or give instructions to their players. I mean, if you're the midfield coach, you weren't allowed to give an instruction to one of the midfielders without running it past Mark Neeld first. Now, that model's never going to work.
Oh,
in any,
but also, especially if that key person is Mark Neeld.
Exactly.
The fact that they said we're not even going to replace him, and I thought even not replacing him is an upgrade.
Yeah.
Like, you're in trouble where they go, we don't even need to replace you, and not having someone in that role is better.
I don't know if you heard, I heard a bit of him this morning, Dan Richardson, the Essendon football manager.
Yeah.
Now, Dan's coming, he was spinning it like Shane Warne this morning.
Right.
And he was making very little sense, and there was nothing that would inspire the Essendon supporters as to what's going on. But reading between the lines, Mark Neeld was obviously a bad fit. The whole thing was going badly. And as you say, to sack him and then...
But everyone that knows Mark Neeld and the Melbourne players and staff, it's in one of the rare cases I've ever had without even prompting when you're talking to them, just speak openly, scathingly of him. He is a divisive, well, not even divisive suggests there's some that like you and some that don't.
Yeah.
He just has left a path of destruction. Like, people just describe him as being like mean and horrible and angry all the time, and he puts everyone's nose how to join.
And that's all right. We've built a podcast around those three emotions.
Right. So it's kind of this weird thing where it's like, this is the least surprise, especially under pressure. I mean, he melted down under the pressure of Melbourne in plain view. So the fact that this all came to a head and he basically had everyone offside is not that surprising to me.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting what happens next. I mean, what's going to happen in the Essendon coaches box this week? I mean, this week, I reckon there'll be too much talk in there this week. You won't be able to shut them up this week.
But what was Worsfold like? How much was he involved in this decision? This is the things we don't know. Like,
that's
and if it was has got this bad, how had he let it?
Yeah,
like, it must have been like the idea that everything was getting funneled through Neeld must have had the tick off of the senior coach.
Well,
like, it's not like John Worsfold was like, well, I don't want to do that, and Mark Neild's like, bad luck.
Because a lot of Worsfold's what people say about him who've played under him or worked under him is that he's a great manager and delegator and motivator, but a lot of your training drills and stuff like that, he's happy to handle them off, but a great people manager. So that suggests to me that the way they were running things had the tick from Woosha from the top.
Well, it would have to have. It would have to have.
Yeah.
I mean, no head coach would.
So is this
not stop his assistant coach talking?
His authority, do you reckon?
Oh, yeah.
And this is, I reckon, this is Essendon's way of giving him a warning and a kick in the nuts without doing it sort of to him. We'll get rid of his lieutenant, and that might.
But the thing about that is to do it now and so publicly, and it must have been completely unsustainable.
Yeah.
Because if it was just they didn't think he was up to the job, why do it right now so publicly? So it must have got to the point where it was unsustainable to continue having him even around. Like, because they could have moved him into a non-game day role. Like they could have said, you know what I mean? If they did
into management,
they could have done a restructure.
But your laptop, and
that's right. Keep him until the end of the year, and then you let him go. But this blows the place up. So instead, you got to wonder. It must have been to the point where they were just all hated each other.
Again, you wonder. I mean, I've got nothing against Mark Neeld personally, but you wonder.
Don't you?
Given his...
Not if you didn't watch what he did to Melbourne.
Well, yeah, there's a bit of that, I've got to say. But the point being is that given his track record at Melbourne and everywhere else, I'm surprised he got the gig in the first place.
Well, I think a lot of people thought, and this was a Malthouse thing, that because Malthouse was a big rap for him as an assistant coach, it was that thing of, he's been promoted above his pay grade, and but he was a good assistant coach.
Yeah.
But I, from every bit of, if you're talking about culture, every bit of feedback I've had about Mark Neeld, going beyond even his Melbourne days, is he's not exactly, someone that is beloved.
He's not a people's person.
No. So was that the best person to... But who would go to Essendon for a while there?
Well, that's true, but, but But there's plenty of blokes getting around who put their hand up.
Oh yeah,
for an assistant coach's job, because they're well paid these days, and you've got to do it 2 or 3 times, a couple of different clubs before you're even considered probably.
It doesn't make a lot of sense, the whole thing. So, but the depth of how bad the Bombers have gone.
Essendon for quite some time.
Well, I mean, if you're a fan that's stuck by this club and paid your membership, you'd be pretty annoyed. And I know that there's a big, stand by herd component who think the club never done anything wrong, but there's also a lot who are the silent majority who think the club did some dumb things. Both they think herd wasn't actually great for the club, and they also think that the club did not handle everything well afterwards, right? And you look at some of the people they've had involved, like even what's happening with Bomber now and all this, you go, it's not a surprise it was a pretty destabilising kind of place, right? So if you're one of those fans who's sort of stuck fat despite not being that thrilled with how everything's gone down, you're looking at it now going, well, seriously, why am I doing this?
Because for those type of fans who have stuck fat, at the end of last season, they would have thought, okay, all this is now behind us.
Yeah, we've got a blank slate.
We've turned the corner. We're on the way up. We aren't going to win the flag in the next season, but they've picked up Stringer and Sard and Smith. We're on the way back. But now this is just pulled the rug out again.
Yeah, totally. Tim Byrne wrote in, was Mark Neeld sent as a sleeper agent by the Giants to gradually engineer the destruction of every Victorian club? He's doing a good job. Where do you want to send him next?
I was about to say, where can he pop Hawthorn?
Send him to Hawthorn. Well, that was my theory. Yeah. I once wrote this in a column years ago. The equalisation strategy should be whoever wins the premiership gets Mark Neeld the next year as senior coach.
Yeah, I can agree with that.
Chris Marantelli wrote in, do you think Essendon have just now realised that recruiting Stringer was a mistake, or do you think something twigged when he rolled up to day one of pre-season with a lion's head tattooed, emblazoned all over his torso? It was actually his stomach, wasn't it? It was like the mouth was his belly button.
You can just see a couple of bits of the lion's mane sticking out from the shoulder bits of his jumper. And you've got to say, in this last probably 10 or 15 years, AFL players' tattoos have gone to a whole another level.
But that's the worst one I've seen.
This is the worst one, the worst individual one I've seen.
Oh, yeah.
Because if you look at Swanee and blokes like this and even,
Nathan Jones.
And then the guys who have full sleeves and full legs.
Yeah.
At least there are lots of different pictures.
And that's a look and it kind of... But the Jake Stringer one is just something...
The one on the front.
That line, it's just... But it sums up Jake Stringer, Yeah.
Well, I can tell
Not a lot of forethought.
He hasn't
thought things
the
through.
Consequences of his actions. or just how bad it's going to look when he's 50 and he's got a fat gut. How's the lion going to look then?
It's going to be a big fat lion. It's going to look like the lead singer of Nickelback. Alistair Clarkson, after losing to Sydney on Friday, absolutely teed off on Sydney, saying that they got away with blue murder. Basically talking about how in the forward line they blocked defenders and got in their way so they couldn't defend. Now, he went absolutely nuts, and then they kicked 1-5 in the last quarter compared to the Swans 5-0. So you could also argue that there were a few if they kicked straight. Kicking, But he went off tap about that. He then also managed to somehow get a meeting with Gillon McLaughlin at a Paran Cafe on Monday morning where he took a laptop along to show him his concerns, which has caused Sydney to be furious. Yeah. Now, Sydney's view of it is they are not doing anything illegal, and this is stuff that Hawthorn has done. Every club does. Like, if you're it's not illegal to block someone. No. Like if you're just standing your ground or...
Blocking is a bit of an art form which is taught at that level.
Yeah.
And the good blocking is where you can look at it and go, was that a block or was he just standing there? If you make it too obvious, it's a free kick.
Or moving into to block space for leads and all this. It's what every defence does.
That Sydney do very well. They're well coached.
But so do Hawthorn.
Yeah, and Hawthorn have been doing it for years.
Well, that's what Sydney have said. They've gone, Hawthorn do this. Like, if you want to start showing footage of this, we're happy to do it. John Longmire was furious, and rightly so. Yeah. But what's Gillon doing, meeting with Clarkson?
Clarko's got to get off Tinder. But the thing that came out yesterday morning, half an hour after the meet, secret meeting.
I know.
Well, it ain't that secret if it's in a cafe in Chapel Street, is it?
I know, that's right. Like, so
you want a secret meeting, you have it at
where would you have
where
would you have your secret meeting?
Oh, probably a cafe in Paran.
Just anywhere. So that's kind of amazing that happened, and that is interesting. Now, I thought Sydney and Hawthorn that was a terrific game. I mean,
it was a ripper to watch.
We had a great weekend of footy.
Yeah.
There was a few games that weren't amazing, but overall, the game's meant to be dying. I was at...
I thought footy was dead.
I know. After the Nick Natanui tackle and everything, it was all over.
The tackle was dead. The bumper's dead.
The congestion's ruining the game.
Yeah.
Then you had a series of storylines that came along. Not only good games, but you had, you had things like Trent Cotchin, Dusty Martin, Ben Jacobs, like all the midfield battles in that Richmond North game, which was Cunnington and all this, like just absolutely. If you're a footy fan of any generation, just terrific to watch.
It was good footballers against good footballers. And some individual contests.
And you had what's his name? Getting up and kicking 7 on
Ben
the
Ronke
on Sydney, kicking 7, which is like and good goals too, freakish goals.
He looked like a player.
So you look at all these
last year in the Amos.
You look at that, and then you look at and how close that Hawthorn one was, and then you've got the Showdown, which we'll get to in a second.
Yeah.
So I'm looking at all this going, what nonsense about this sport being dead? Like this was. I watched every game over the weekend.
Yeah, I didn't miss
a couple
on
one or two on replay, but it was fine. Like there's always going to be a rubbish game, but that's sort of just the way it is.
The worst game was Collingwood Geelong. Yeah, and that was mainly because Collingwood played a horrific style of footy. And they only kicked 4 or 5
Well, and in fairness to them, they had a lot of injuries. They had 2 out for the whole second half, and they were just hanging on to try and what else are you going to do if you're a good 2 down? I went along to the Showdown.
Yeah, I want to hear about this because I watched this. I watched the second half, so I saw Robbie Gray's just ridiculous third quarter.
Yeah.
And then that last quarter, I hate to say it because it was Port Adelaide versus Adelaide, but it was pulsating. You could not turn the TV off.
The Showdown is, I've been Adelaide Oval many times, but I haven't been to a Showdown before.
I was just about to say, have you been to one before?
Not a Showdown.
I've heard other people blokes from Melbourne say, there's something about it.
Well,
once you get there.
I'd say this about footy in Adelaide, having been over there quite a lot. So the Adelaide Oval is insanely good.
Yeah,
like it is stunning. It's not just that it's got a great feel and a great look. It's modern. It's designed beautifully. Like it's actually got design in it, not just like the MCG is just big. It's a modern Coliseum, and that's what's impressive about it. But it's not that beautiful, even in the back rooms. But at the way that Adelaide Oval works is it's got the open bit with the scoreboard, but when you're in like some of the conference rooms, when you're in some of the back bits walking around, it's got open out bits to the parklands. It's just a stunning...
The corporate boxes where you hang out. Yeah.
Well, I was actually in the big function area doing a speech. So, but every bit of it is like genuinely impressive. It then ties in quite nicely with the footbridge back into Adelaide, right? So you can kind of... So you wander down and there's Port and Crows fans everywhere.
Yeah.
And it's now linked in quite closely with the city. So it's not like when you're walking around the city in the hours before it, there is a sense that there's a big game on.
There's a game on,
right?
Yeah.
So you get that. It's almost like grand final feeling in Melbourne, right? So you get that. You go down there and every Port or Crow supporter you talk to, they all remember every showdown. They remember every moment. Yeah. They live and die by it, and they all tell you how much you do not want to go to work the day after your team has lost a showdown.
Oh, okay.
Like it is bragging rights brutal. So it really, like, these are two teams that they don't like each other.
So employment in Adelaide.
Yeah, I think Monday half of people, and they talk about like, you know, Port and Adelaide are seen as having different values and beliefs, and so
Adelaide being the top end of town toffee type. And
Port the working class and
who've been there on the docks and that for
and have the
history.
They got the history, and they see so you got all this happening. So the crowd is just like crazily into it. Like it is insane. So then you have the actual game, and there's just this real feeling about it. But I mean, if it had been a 60-point belting, it wouldn't have been as exciting. But look, everyone's riding every bump. So when it's close, that crowd was just... So after every goal, like Port were up, then they were down. Adelaide were up. The Adelaide fans are just giving it to the Port. Yeah. So everywhere you look, someone is just in the front. Yeah, and it's usually a mate of theirs, right? Yeah. Like it's not like, violence. But everyone is... So in that final, 10 minutes...
Yeah.
They are wet.
It must have been great to be
You
there.
just feel like I'm a neutral, so I could enjoy it and just watch. So I'm standing there, these people, and they're all sitting down in these areas, and one of them, the goal gets kicked. Adelaide kicked the goal. What's his name from 50 metres out?
Yeah.
And goes through, and Adelaide Crows fans with 40 seconds left.
We're home.
They just go ballistic, and they're pointing at the Port fans, and they're just getting so stuck into them. And the Port fans are just literally their heads, and you're just like, this is hilarious. And you think it's over. And there was a guy standing next to me who had the time on his phone. He's like, there's 40 seconds left. It's all over. And so everyone's sort of celebrating around me, and they all kind of get a sense of it. And then, it goes down there, Motlop gathers, steps past two, kicks that goal. Well, it just swings in so you just got to remember, not only have they thought they're about to lose after thinking they're going to win, they suddenly look like they're going to lose.
Yeah.
They've just had every Crows fan in the ground give it to them with both barrels. So they just return.
Be pretty good.
They just return fire like you've never seen it. It is just beautiful. I was in stitches because they were just the same guy who and the Crows fans just oh my God. But still, not everyone knew there was whether there was 20 seconds or what. And so then the siren goes, and the place is just pandemonium. Yeah. So then you wander back over the footbridge, and the town is just pumping. Unlike Sydney, where I was up the last 2 weekends before this one, I was in Sydney for Comedy Festival and for Sydney Swans game. With the lockout laws and everything, Sydney is just dead, I know. And so you go to Adelaide after the Showdown, and I know that's going to be one of its biggest nights, but now you cross over the bridge and there's just bars all along the river there. Yeah. And then you go further in and there's just more and more these little, really cool bars and restaurants, and the place is just pumping. Everyone's chatting to each other. And the night,
Adelaide ambassador, Titus O'Reilly.
But it's just really well done what they've done there, because I used to go and it would be it would rightly be, and I know this is going to be one of the busiest nights of the year in there, but it was pumping. It was a really fun. It was just fun. It was a really fun night out.
Well, by rejigging the Adelaide Oval. Because, the last time I went to a big game in Adelaide, it was at Football Park, which is, miles out of town, in the middle of nowhere, so there was no real atmosphere. So I reckon next year, can we go to the Showdown, but we'll wear our Melbourne gear and just sit there with a cheese platter and see how we go.
No, but they were everyone was very friendly too, and it was it was a fantastic I would recommend game people. It was a great, and I'd recommend.
I didn't know you were there, but I was actually that last 10 minutes I was watching it thinking, geez, the atmosphere at the ground must be absolutely.
It was. I was streaming on my phone the Melbourne game at the same time, which was just
it was all over.
It was, and I ended up turning it off after a while and watched the replay later on, because it was just, you can't watch Melbourne play Suns in that game when there's that happening in front of you. But I couldn't recommend it more getting over there. If your team's playing over there, or it's just a fantastic event, and it was a great game, and just reminds you that footy is actually better than anything else. Getting past footy, talking about Gold Coast, various other things, we have had an outbreak of umpire touching. Inappropriate umpire touching. What's going on? Why do these things come in waves? It's tripping or sliding or, sling tackles. Remember everyone hitting everyone last year?
Yeah,
Bug and, there was all that. Suddenly it's touching umpires.
Look, I have a theory that's not necessarily the player's fault totally. I think a lot of it comes down to the congestion. You know, you can argue whether it's ruining the game or whether there's too much of it, but it is incredibly congested now. And I've at a couple of games I've seen live this year, when you're sitting down fairly close to the fence, you're close to the action.
Yeah.
And quite a few times I've seen the umpires throw it up at a stoppage and then they're backing out of it and they've bumped into players themselves and done the sorry mate on the way out, purely because there are so many players.
But this is also, but a lot of these have been more like when they're talking after a decision and they place a hand.
If they brush their arm.
Like, I thought Hawkins was silly, as much as people was like, he definitely sort of slapped. You couldn't argue it was just an inconsequential thing. And the AFL's going to throw the book at anyone.
And rightly so.
Because they don't want to let it get out of hand. Stephen May, obviously, he got off because it was not seen as intentional. Yeah, well,
you can see he was sort of explaining his side of the free kick and he put his head down at May. And he didn't intend to hit the umpire with his head.
Isn't that a level here which in some ways I didn't have a problem where it's like, it's a level of common sense around it. I thought Mays was pretty incidental and obviously didn't really intend to really touch him, when I felt Hawkins really was being a bit of a goose.
Yeah. Look, I couldn't agree more. I think Stephen May would have been really stiff to be suspended this week for that reason. And they have shown, an uncharacteristic level of common sense.
On that bit, both the Curnow brothers have been Ed and Charlie.
The Cray brothers, as they're now known.
They've both been referred to the Tribunal. I think that's tonight.
That's tonight, yeah. I see.
Melbourne fans are very keen for that.
I think it'd be terrible for the look of the game if both Curnows were suspended for a week.
I think they have to be.
While you're at it, give Cripps one.
Well, I tell you, it would be interesting if they both get rubbed out.
Oh, it will.
So let's see. I'm not sure. After the May one, you kind of wonder whether they might be okay. Who knows? What did you think of the two? I mean, we're so biased here.
Yeah. I can't remember which Curnow it was. One of them, I reckon, definitely will go because it was very similar to the Tom Hawkins.
Yeah.
The other one could go either way.
Yeah.
I reckon, look, I hope it's Charlie Curnow who gets suspended because he's the better of the two Curnows.
KG wrote in, with all the will all the inappropriate touching of umpires result in another hush money case?
Oh, that's a good question.
Well, that's basically what the fine is. I think, did May get a fine in the end instead of being...
Yeah, I think he got a fine.
Yes, that's it.
And I think, I'm going to say another hush money case. That reminds me, did you see the Freo Ross Lyon press conference last week?
Oh, yeah, we can't miss the...
How bad was that? I mean, you know what
it was as defensive as Ross Lyon's coaching style.
Yeah. When they use the confidentiality clause, they presented that they could not reveal that they had a confidentiality clause because of the confidentiality clause. It got to that stupidity
but
level.
The jargon also, the jargon of it all is so ridiculous. Like, they were saying learnings all the time.
Yeah.
I mean, what's wrong with the word lessons? Yeah. The lessons from this were, they say learnings all the time. And they said it about 40 times. I'm just like... And then they were saying, we're committed to best practice, world class. And you're like... Obviously you're not, because something's happened here that,
And you've handled it really poorly.
And this is where the confidentiality, in some ways, doesn't seem to help anyone in a way, because, it's that thing of for justice to be done has to be seen to be done. So with the Sam Power Pepper and the Ross Lyon one, is you don't know if what they did... I know there's rumours and some people say, oh, he did this or he did that, but...
Nobody really knows.
Well, some people know, but... Not everyone, I've got a fair idea of both of them from talking to a few people, but I still couldn't put my hand on my heart and say I'm 100% sure. It's still a bit rumour and innuendo, right? So you don't know when it's like this if they just... It could be the scale of they said something that was a bit, mildly off colour to... They did the worst thing you could almost do. You don't know because it's just a complete whitewash.
Huge divide.
It leaves the imagination. It leaves the imagination. I'm not saying either of them did anything. They could have both done nothing wrong, or they could have both done something that was very minor, but stupid, and you apologise and move on. Or it could have been a lot worse than that. You don't know. That's the problem. No one knows. So in some ways, they can't defend themselves, which is a problem. So if they were both, say, relatively or completely innocent, you'd feel pretty bad for him.
Yeah.
Because if it happened to you, you'd want to be able to come out and defend yourself and say, I never touched them, or I never did this, or there's footage.
And that was stupid, and
or you say, mea culpa, I said this, I was drunk, I was an absolute idiot, I deserve a punishment.
Yeah.
What's my punishment?
Fine.
And then,
I'll cop it on the chin and we move on.
Yeah, especially if it's not a major thing, like, it's a different thing if it's like a sexual assault or something. But that's what we don't know what it is,
There's, as I said, there's a huge gap between... something minor that can be apologised for and moved on from to something
especially if the person accepts your apology too,
and to something massive and not just inappropriate or stupid, but, possibly criminal. There's a huge difference. And so I agree. The whole confidentiality thing doesn't do a lot for the victim of the alleged offence or the person accused of that alleged offence.
Yeah, I mean, the Port Adelaide case, there wasn't any money tied to it, right? So you look at that and go, well, there's no hush money. Yeah. So then what did he do, Did he brush up against it, or did he say something off colour, or did he, or what level? Now, if it was he did something stupid, well, he needs to be punished. You want to know the victim is comfortable with the punishment and maybe has accepted an apology or something, and then you can move on. But the problem with the Ross Lyon one... And I know I'm paraphrasing that Paul one. It could be a lot more serious. I don't know. But with the Ross Lyon one, there's hush money attached to it. As much as they call it confidential settlement and all this sort of stuff, like, it just looks terrible. Yeah. Even if it is 100% legit, which I don't know if it is, but it just looks so bad.
And again...
so then to come out with a full-throated defence of him...
Yeah. And when they first sort of admitted that there was... And the club, I don't think have ever used the phrase hush money. But when a payment had been made... They said it was the low five figures, which would suggest $10,000 or $20,000. And then a couple of weeks later, it was in excess of 100. And that's it. And you go, well, was it in excess of 100? And that's a lot more than 10. But, so is that relative to the offence?
But see, what I don't understand,
raising questions.
What I don't understand was that, so that could legitimately have been something happened. She accepted an apology. Then she decided she didn't want to work there anymore. They said, all right, well, we'll pay you out your contract or something, right? So it's not necessarily hush money. It was just she wanted to leave anyway. I'm not saying that's true, but if you could argue there was something there where it wasn't actually hush money, it was the payout of a contract or something.
There's a spot for Mark Neeld just opened up.
But you know what I mean? Where you go, that could have been it, but you don't even know if that's it. So it just looks like they paid her to be quiet, and then she hasn't been happy and other people have started to talk. So,
and so the more you cover things up.
I just don't think it's over.
You don't think it's over?
Nah.
It ain't over till it's over.
Well, it's so unsatisfactory. Like, if Freo get back to winning, maybe, but like...
Well, they bloody won on the weekend. I tipped against them because I thought, geez, after all this going down...
Well, they're playing St Kilda, though.
Yeah, but I thought, here's a chance for the Saints.
Getting back to our umpire issues, so Stephen May getting off, My City Melbourne wrote in, was being made to play the China game too harsh a punishment for Stephen May.
I like that because, you got. This is what Michael Christian had to weigh up. If I suspend him for a week, what's he going to do? He's going to sit at home and go, I'll go down. I'll drive down to Byron for the weekend. I'll have a surf. I'll go and catch a band, have a few pots. And he goes, well, that's no punishment. Let's send him to Shanghai and make him play.
Do you think the Gold Coast, though, are going to make it? In the long term? This is their history. This is my sort of thing with the Gold Coast. This year is a write-off for them. Beyond, they've been a terribly run for a long time, but
I don't think GWS are going to last the distance.
Well, so my view of it is the Gold Coast, which what worries me about them is twofold. There's a short-term and a long-term problem. The short-term problem is for this year is they've come off a bad season and the Rodney Eade era didn't really work, right? Then you look at they suddenly this year, because of the Com Games, are like these
play at home for
grey nomads travelling the world, not able to play at home. So they go and play they sell a home game and play it in WA. They have to live in WA for 2 weeks as a result and play 2 games there, both losses. They go all the way down and for some reason have to play in Ballarat. They, for the Bulldogs game.
For the Footscray game,
They then come back and play another home game against the D's at the Gabba, at which 6,060 people show up, which is like ridiculous.
And of those, I reckon, way more than half were Melbourne supporters.
Oh, yeah.
Easily.
So then you have that.
Yeah.
Then you have them going to China next week for another home game.
Yeah.
So they've been in the space of about 2 months, lived in WA for 2 weeks, Ballarat, Bendigo, Ballarat, Brisbane, and then off to China. Yeah. And they're still not back home. Like so you look at that and go, even the best team would struggle. Like, it's just, so how can you do that? And how can a competition do that to someone?
This year, as you say, will be a write-off pretty much for the Suns. They're not going to bounce back and win their last 10 games. So what do you reckon they're going to have to do next year to make themselves a viable entity? That's
my short-term problem for them, right? Yeah. Their longer-term problem is nothing new. The fact that the Gold Coast as a community have rejected every sporting team that has ever been there. Yeah. And the money they're pouring in for the return. See, to me, I get what the AFL is trying to do with the Greater Western Sydney Giants. I think it's going to be a massively multi-generational long slog, but I think they've got a chance of getting there because you're seeing great participation numbers in the junior levels, and I think NRL are not as tied into that community as people think, and I just think it's going to take 25 to 30 years, as it did with the Sydney Swans, right? And I think you have to be in Sydney, and I think because so much of the country and media is just run out of Sydney, and I also can see that the two clubs, it means you have a rivalry there, and you also have a game every single week physically in Sydney, right? Yeah. So to me, if you're going to have to throw some money, a lot of money into something for a long-term proposition, that to me makes more sense than the Gold Coast, where you've already got Brisbane Lions an hour up the road.
And they've never really, despite winning 3 premierships in a row, they've got
their own problems. So you get all the Queenslanders behind the Lions. Yeah. That's to me where the Gold Coast Suns just made no sense. Now, if you could say, well, do you move into Tassie? What do you do with them? Well, but that's where just to me the Gold Coast has never made any sense whatsoever. And it's also, there doesn't seem to be this outrage out of when you say something like this. Like if I bagged the Giants, I get I used to make a joke because it was 1 or 2 because it was, but when I first started doing shows in Sydney, there'd be no Giants fans in the audience. Yeah. I'd say any Giants fans here, and that was the opening gag almost because it would be silence, right? Yeah. Now, last time I was up there was lots. Yeah. Now that's a pretty small base to go off, but at least they get angry if you bag them. I've never even heard from a Suns supporter in my life. No. So, that's where I just kind of look at it and go, well, what's it going to do?
The one thing I wonder about is the AFL, I mean, they've spent hundreds of millions already on both clubs.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that they've thought it through, that it's going to continue to cost them that much money.
Well, that is the problem they're facing.
The Giants are flying now, and they're a star-studded unit. Yeah. They've made the preliminary final the last 2 years, and this year again, they'll be knocking on the door.
Well, they're out of the final 8 right now.
I know, but they'll come good. They'll be up there. But the worry is in 3 years' time, they might be crap. They might be down the bottom of the ladder, and they won't be getting 4 out of the top 5 draft picks anymore.
No, that's right. But I can see the logic to trying to win over Sydney and using 2 teams and trying to create rivalry and try geographically dispersed.
As you say, 25 years at least before they're fully established, and they're going to have some ups and downs in that time, and it's going to cost the AFL hundreds of millions more. I don't know whether they've quite banked on that although they've now got free waterfront land to build their new edifice.
Just finishing off on the umpire touching, Liam Ahern wrote in, do you think umpires should wear less provocative clothing?
Liam, you're victim shaming, Liam. You're victim shaming. You can't do that, son.
Because there's nothing sexier than an umpiring uniform. That's why everyone dresses up in that Halloween.
When I see Razor Ray in that, that fluoro canary,
That's what you get your missus for Valentine's Day, an umpire's uniform.
Yeah, a Razor Ray cutout, Just stand in the corner of the boudoir.
Nat Fyfe got cleared for kneeing Jake Carlisle in the head. Do you think that's because it was Jake Carlisle, or I didn't think that was as unintentional as seemed to be accepted by Michael Christensen. What did you think? I watched that footage a fair bit. And it looked like
saw it a few times. I reckon Fyfe, just a tad lucky on that one.
I thought it was quite deliberate.
Yeah. Look,
but I mean, you can't. I say that knowing it can be with angles and cameras, it can be hard to tell and blah blah. But it didn't look as. My immediate thought when I watched it a few times wasn't. I thought, I reckon he's in a bit of trouble here.
I agree.
Especially because the guy's knocked out and didn't play for the rest of the game.
I've played a lot of footy over a lot of years, never at this highest level, of course. But I've got to say, I don't reckon I ever accidentally kneed a bloke in the head.
How many times did you do it on purpose?
Well, I'm just saying, if you hit a bloke in the head with your knee, generally you can avoid doing so.
It looked a bit.
It's not like sometimes, if you go up and try and spoil from behind and you mistime it, you might whack the bloke in the head. That's accidental. You pay the price, but that's an accident. But I reckon 99 times out of 100, if your knee hits a bloke in the head, you could have avoided it.
Yeah.
So, and watching Nat Fyfe, I reckon he was, desperately lucky to get off that one. And then he got off the other one for hitting Ross from St Kilda as well.
Yeah.
But just the fact that he was cleared immediately by Chris O on both of those tells me that Fyfe's probably already got 15 Brownlow votes in the can.
You reckon that's why?
Oh, there's no question.
Luke Parker got let off, which I thought was the sensible decision. Did you agree or not?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I thought he wasn't doing anything wrong. No. I thought he was actually positioned his body fine.
Yeah, I thought, you don't want to blame a bloke for getting himself hurt.
It is a contact sport. This is the thing we can't get badly.
He was in, and look, I tell you now, at lower levels of footy, at sort of young academy levels, now they are teaching the kids to turn their bodies sideways when they both run at the ball. It is something that is taught just as much as kicking technique and handballing with you on the wrong side.
Yeah.
They teach it constantly now, and it's so important. And I thought Luke Parker, in that split second that you've got to make a decision, it's your classic, he couldn't have done anything else.
Well, but there are going to be times at the speed of the game and the way it happens, players are going to come together awkwardly occasionally.
And get hurt. Somebody gets hurt. That's the way it goes.
You don't like to see it. But my real big thing on this is, did the player try to really go past the ball to bump?
Yeah.
If you're not going for the ball.
Yeah, you can't do that anymore. You used to be able to, but not anymore. And that's fine.
And that's the key bit, So that's what I thought. And the Natanui one with a week before, that one I was a bit more like, I get he kind of, you could argue he drove him down a bit, but all that stuff about, once again, the AFL explaining about how he should be calculating weight and height.
Look, in the AFL's defence, I'd never like to use that phrase. I think Gleeson, the QC who made that statement, if I'd been Gillan McLaughlin, I'd read that, I would have thought, oh, mate, you've just...
Well, they did kind of come out and walk back from it pretty quickly and say, he was trying to win a case. That's not really our actual...
Yeah.
Although, having seen AFL players in nightclubs over the years, they can size up someone's height and weight pretty quickly.
They can calculate it instantly, yeah.
The other thing that came out of the rule committee or the new competition committee, they had their first meeting last Thursday, their first thing that they announced is they're not going to make any changes to the game rules of the game. They're going to have them all locked up by October the year before the next season, rather than doing it January, February of the new season. So they're not going to be
testing new rules in
But
AFL
the problem's always been their interpretation of rules changing throughout the year more than the actual rule change. I mean, often the rule changes are stupid to begin with, but that's often the problem too.
Yeah.
But I mean, it seems funny that they're sort of almost bragging, going, "Hey, we're going to get it done by October." You're like, yeah, well, that's the most common sense thing you shouldn't have been doing for years.
The next time we tamper with the game, you'll know about it a bit earlier. That's all.
That's right. The AFL, in a deal that you were absolutely thrilled about, and probably you're the best person to talk people through this.
Oh, you think?
The AFL have signed an esports deal.
Yeah.
What's this about?
Esports, as you may know, or we've talked about in the past, is basically video games played on giant screens in big venues like stadiums and what have you.
Yeah.
Not necessarily MCG-sized stadiums, but maybe Rod Laver Arena or something like this that has a lot of supporters there, and they're played literally like it's a giant Xbox game.
Yeah.
And
it's competitive computer games.
And it's not...
And it's huge.
Oh, it is a massive thing going around the world.
Because I think people over a certain age look at it. It's kind of like, remember, depending on what generation you were, if you grew up before computer games, so you're like 55, 60, 75 now, you look at people playing computer games, it's just foreign to you, and especially adults playing computer games. Yeah. But if you're like 30 to 40, you grew up and you kind of have played computer games your whole life, and a lot of people have never stopped, right? Yeah. So to them, it's playing computer games it's a hobby. It's the way they relax, right? And so you got 40-year-old bankers playing computer games.
A pinball machine in your
it's like watching TV once was, because it's just all you've ever done. So it's not a new weird thing. But to someone who's probably like 40, say, they look at it and go, I can understand playing computer games, but I don't understand sitting around watching it. Yeah. But to someone who's 15, 14, 16, and YouTube's been around their whole life, and they go on, to them it's as normal as anything. They watch it and go, why wouldn't you watch it? Like they see it as a skill, you know.
They recognise the brilliance of these players in the same way that we'll watch a game of live football and say, geez, I could never have done that.
But I still find it, for me, because I'm older, I look at it and go, I couldn't think of anything I'd like to do less than watch someone else play a computer game. I can understand playing it, but I don't like...
It has become big, and they've signed a deal with the AFL with Riot Games, they're called. They're apparently a big esport sort of company. They're going to have a big gaming tournament in Melbourne in November this year. They haven't announced a venue, but it'll probably be at Etihad. And they're going to have they're going to call it the League of Legends. They're going to have players from.
I think League of Legends is the game.
Yeah.
And League of Origin is going to be the series they have. Yeah.
League of Origin, yeah. It's going to be like State of Origin players playing League of Legends. Now, I don't know. Do you know much about League of Legends?
Well, I just know it's one of the main competitive games they play.
Is it a sporting type of game?
No, I think it's like a fantasy dungeon type of game, but that's all I know. I haven't actually ever seen.
Fortnite's the big one.
I'm aware of Fortnite.
Fortnite is just taken over the.
I tell you how to never play computer games again. Yeah. Have a book deal. You never do anything fun ever again. You're just fighting procrastination all the time.
Yeah.
So that's the other. There's a few big ones, and so apparently they fill out whole. They had one at the Bank Arena up in Sydney, which was sold out. They had $310,000 prize pool.
So it's a fair whack.
So I think that arena is sort of like the size of a basketball arena. So it's sort of pretty big. So amazing. Anyway, so the AFL, what I can see happening in a few years, a bit like with the A-League. Remember the A-League launched the E-League?
Yeah.
And it outrated the actual A-League. I could just see that happening.
See, the AFL should take it a step further down that track, and they could do away with football entirely.
Yeah, well, I think they'd like to.
And just play every game on a giant screen.
Yeah, well, then you just need one person, to pay all the players.
You don't need a whole coach's box full of people who aren't allowed to communicate with each other. You have one 17-year-old without a girlfriend.
I'm looking forward to Mark Neeld bobbing up as a coach in one of these e-sport teams. Cricket Australia announced during the week they're cancelling the Bangladesh tour. Now, a lot of people will be going, there was a Bangladesh tour.
Exactly. What a shock.
This has not been met well by the Bangladesh cricket authorities, who say it's disrespectful, but apparently they found out by reading online. They didn't get told by Cricket Australia, which does not surprise me if that's true. They basically decided to shut the tour because it was going to begin in August, and they felt there were two things. One, that it's competing head-to-head with NRL and AFL, so August is very early to anyone in Australia to care about cricket. Secondly, I think no broadcaster wanted to buy it.
Where were they going to play it?
I don't even know the answer to that because it just suddenly got cancelled.
Yeah, it just sounds to me like that.
So the whole thing sounded like weird. Apparently there was talk that this was a payoff for Bangladesh giving Australia a vote a while ago in the ICC, various things.
Well, so now that's just sounding like it's feasible.
So reneging on a deal.
That's got Cricket Australia
written all over it. So we've only hosted them once before in 2003 up at the top end, up in Darwin.
Yeah.
So last year we tied them 1-1 over there.
And they were saying, there's Cricket Australia saying, it was probably not going to be commercially viable.
Yeah.
Yeah, which,
they just signed a
$1.2 billion.
Well, they do have a bit of a, this is the thing. Do you have if you make this decision all the time, you apart from India and England, no, they don't make any money out of almost any of the other tours.
No,
so let's just make this a sport between India, England, and Australia, and just forget the rest. Is that what they're saying? Like
pretty much.
But then cricket dies, or it becomes like baseball, which it's sort of becoming, which is like America's the main for baseball, and the rest are just sort of satellite countries. Yeah. India is as big as America is in baseball. In cricket now, it all revolves around England.
India, they call the shots in cricket.
Yeah, all worldwide. The money comes from it.
Yeah.
All the fans, all the interest, all the...
Yeah, I'm glad you said that this was a payoff for some dodgy
Well, that's
deal
what the
Cricket Australia
people said,
but it rings true because otherwise, who would Cricket Australia would have
thought this was an idea?
Teed off on this. Yeah, Bangladesh, well, Tour Australia in August 2018. Yeah, that's going to work well. We've got no venues booked, no TVs interested.
Aren't they travelling beautifully, Cricket Australia?
And now, how are all of these bands of Smith and Bancroft and Warner, aren't they suddenly been reeled back into the boat?
Well, like Langer, who's meant to be bringing in all this culture change, has come out and said they're all brilliant guys. He'd have them back in a second. And you just go, okay.
And Darren Lehman's just got another
he's got another job
at Cricket Australia.
So that must have been quid pro quo for him to go quiet.
Club cricket in WA.
Yeah.
The whole thing, pretty soon they'll be,
they'll be paying them millions.
The bands will be completely off.
So, very strange.
Yeah.
Getting to the listeners' questions, I might come back to the top one, but because Mark Laz wrote in, is having a netball background the AFLW equivalent of having a basketball background? The AFLW, I've got to say, has got some of the best, because all these women who haven't been able to play Australian rules and they had to go and follow other sports. Yeah. So they went off and Erin Phillips famously played basketball. But you've had all these different, there's hockey-roo players, there's players that have played all these different sports. Some of the funny ones, there was the woman who played ultimate frisbee at the highest level.
Ultimate frisbee.
There's all these weird and wonderful
professional
sports.
Frisbee for women.
Yeah, there's all these
for men, for anybody.
There's all these players that come in from all these other sports because that's what they had to go and do because there was no AFL for them or no Australian rules. So. That is interesting. Greg Toon wrote in, will the AFL be able to wait until this weekend before claiming the China game an unparalleled success?
Well, it won't be long after the game, Greg, before... what's your tip for the crowd? Not necessarily in numbers, but...
Well, they say it's sold out.
Oh, of course they do. How many does it hold, the stadium?
I can't remember. It's like 10,000 or something.
It's not big, but...
But they were all out in the marquee drinking.
Yeah, all out in the marquee. That's where they were last
year. The smart move of this whole thing, which has paid off, are the AFL ever going to win over China? I don't think so.
No.
For Port Adelaide, it's bought in millions of dollars worth of sponsorship.
Yeah.
So that to me is if you're Port, it's been a very savvy commercial move. It's when you start talking about it being...
And let's face it, with the royal wedding... and this game in China, you've got Kochi out of the country for 2 weeks.
So that was the thing to engineer. You think, so you're quite happy with it?
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that
Shut
at all.
the borders, you're saying. Now, Matt Pope wrote in saying this topic he's just sent us is all that needs to be discussed this week.
Oh, I did read this. Yeah.
So this is from a professor in chemical and biomolecular engineering at the University of California in Los Angeles.
How on earth did he track us down? But never mind.
Who? The professor or Matt Pope?
Oh, I was going to say the
Matt
professor.
Pope's just the guy on Twitter. Yeah. No, he's not the professor. He just pointed it to us.
Yeah.
So this professor has designed what he basically figured out. And this is where suddenly you realise science is doing some great work.
Yeah.
Forget about curing cancer and all this rubbish. He's working on an antidote, and he thinks he's almost figured it out, which is to basically end a hangover. Right. So you won't have a hangover anymore. Well, basically, you take it, I think, while you're drinking wine or cocktails or beer, and it means you won't have a hangover.
Oh, you won't even get one. You
won't even get one.
Doesn't have to cure your hangover. You don't get one.
Yeah, so he found these natural enzymes found in liver cells to help the body process it faster. So it's like giving your liver a boost. So instead of just your liver doing it, it basically helps. He's an expert in liver diseases as one of the things he does. And so they developed this antidote and they tested it on mice.
Right.
And they showed that inebriated mice, which fall asleep much faster than drunk humans, so you can test them quicker. The treatment decreased the blood alcohol level by 45% in just 4 hours compared to mice that didn't receive any. So it's much faster, the ability to process alcohol, so therefore you don't get the hangover. Now,
this has got Nobel Prize written all over it.
Nobel Prize written. And the thing about this that I love more than anything else, right, when Matt sent this through, is one, he said, obviously we need to discuss this because you and I would be big fans of this. Are you a big do you get hangovers?
No, I think I've drunk my way past hangovers. I used to get hangovers when I was young.
When you wait, you're there, so now you and I are both just functioning alcoholics, is what you're saying. Like, I don't get a hangover the next day anymore. I get the shakes until I start again. There's nothing wrong with that, is it?
No, there's nothing wrong with it.
If you go a few hours without alcohol and start shaking, is that a bad thing, is all I'm asking?
It can be. It can be. In the wrong hands, it can be.
I tell you what, I always know I've really tied one on when I wake up the next morning and actually feel really good, because then I know I'm just still...
You're still drunk.
Yeah, still drunk. But the thing I love about this story more than anything else is that this guy's job was to get mice drunk.
What do they prefer?
I didn't know that was...
A jaunty Shiraz?
And you got to...
A couple of scooters.
And you've got to say, if you're a mouse in a lab, of all the experiments that can be done on you, this is the best by a country mile. Like, they go to all the mice in the lab. Right, we're going to dissect you. Yeah. We're going to give you cancer. You guys, get stuck in. Here's a slab.
You guys, just get on the piss. You can just see mice strutting around going, hey, your shout. Tomo, 6 pots.
Can you imagine they started getting fights and stuff?
I start arguing, what are you looking at?
You'd be thrilled if you were a mouse. That would be one of the best things ever.
And I love the fact that this professor in chemical biomolecular engineering, that's his job. Yeah.
And that's what he's decided needs to be fixed. The problem with this, as much as everyone would like it, is there's a reason you get hangovers. Yeah. It's your body saying stop,
or tone it down a bit.
Yeah, just take a few days off.
Yeah. Look, I, as much as we'd love to see this go into general practice, I reckon industry and the health sort of lobby would say, it's probably not a great idea to automatically reduce the level of alcohol in your blood by use of a pill before you start drinking.
The only thing I could think of, though, is would this pill cause less damage to your liver because it's doing the work that normally would do? So if you're going to get drunk... Now, the problem with all these things is people would just tend to drink more.
Yeah. It'd completely throw RBT on TV. When they spin around the numbers to see if you're over 0.05, that will just keep spinning like for the entire program.
I'm all for it, though. I'm anything for a stop hangover.
I've just got to thank Matt Pope for bringing to our attention just
absolutely
that particular image that you planted of mice getting drunk in their laboratory cage.
You're just seeing all the things as a mouse you could be asked to test.
Yeah.
This is by far.
Yeah. And you can see they're all standing at the end of the cage, all just drinking pots and pointing it. Hey, look, there's Dave over there. They've sewn an ear on his back.
They all just laugh for about an hour. They all just fall about laughing. The best bit would be the morning after, where there's the control group that aren't on the pills going, I feel awful. And then they look across the other side of the cage and all these mouse are just going, how are you? I'm feeling great. I'm feeling good. What a great night. I'm as sober as. Do you think a drunk mouse, you get an Uber at the end of the night?
Yeah. Stop for a Suvi on the way.
They just drop a Suva. That would be the other thing I'd test. This pill compared to a Suva. Because I'm a big fan of eating just before you get home.
Yeah. That's just before you go to bed. Yeah,
that's the secret.
Yeah.
On that note, we're going to give a T-shirt away. I'm so behind on sending out T-shirts, but to everyone who I've got the list and I've not forgotten, and I will get them out. I just sometimes I've had a very busy couple of months, which is about to come to a screeching halt.
What do you like?
I've got to say, I like Liam Ahern's one. Do you think umpires should wear less provocative clothing?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that is a very good question. Considering, as we said, this epidemic of umpire touching, it has to stop.
It has to stop, and I blame the umpires for their sexy dress, because that's obviously how it works. Well, we will be back later in the week. Thanks, everyone. Sorry we missed last week, but we're back on track now, allegedly, especially if these hangover pills are going to be available. And we'll see you later on.